Hello friends, welcome back to the channel, to the vlog. My name's Maile and today we've got some extremely exciting book discussion to have, okay? If you're new here, I do lots of lifestyle content, mostly just vlogs of mine and my husband's life, and occasionally a sit-down video or two, mostly about books, which is basically my only hobby. So just kidding, I also like to shop. Plenty of those videos on this channel too. So I'm so excited because I feel like this has just been the best couple of months ever for books. The amount of new releases that have come out that have been like super anticipated is kind of extreme in such a small amount of time. Like this never happens for book people. So it's kind of been like Christmas came early. So today I thought I would talk about 4 books that I've read lately that just came out. They're brand new releases within the last month or two. All of them are very highly anticipated for lots of different reasons. We're gonna talk about the Britney Spears memoir. We're gonna talk about Ali Hazelwood's new book, Check&Mate. We're going to talk about A Curse for True Love, and we're going to talk about Iron Flame. Before we get into it, don't forget to like this video, especially if you like book content and want to see more of it, and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any videos coming to our channel. We've got lots of exciting things happening. The holidays are here, baby, and in fact, I think maybe the next video is going to be a decorate with me, so subscribe if you don't want to miss all the crazy. Maile just becomes a whole new person at Christmas time, so strap in, hit that red subscribe button. I promise you won't be bored. I think I'm crazy, but you won't be bored. Okay, let's just go ahead and get on into it. I've had the best time reading all of these books and I want to talk about them all. The first one I think I'm going to talk about is A Curse for True Love, which is the third and final book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. Okay, this one needs just a little bit of backstory, so bear with. Anyone watch the British show Miranda? Oh my gosh, my mom and I are obsessed with that show. My whole family, really. Anyway, so this has been a super popular book series for forever. I hadn't read it at all. It wasn't even on my radar, didn't know anything about it until I watched a video by Carrie Can Read, who is one of my favorite book YouTubers to follow. She did a whole series review, and from like 5 minutes into her video, I was like, I have to stop this video and read the entire series and then come back and watch this video. So that's what I did. I read the first book, which I really enjoyed. I thought was fairly juvenile, but I think I gave it 3 stars, and I really liked it as a start to a series. I liked it enough to continue reading, especially because Carrie was like, the second book, amazing. So I read the second book, which is called The Ballad of Never After, and I really, really liked that one. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't perfect. It still felt a little YA for me and not like super intoxicating and shocking and revealing like all the hype around it was. But I thought, oh my gosh, if the second one is even better than the first one, then by the time I read the third one, I bet it'll be incredible and amazing, just keeps getting better, right? That's what you would think. Is that what happened to me? No. So I don't really know what the consensus is on book talk because I'm an adult and I watch TikToks on Instagram Reels a week later. I don't have a TikTok, so I can only give you my opinion, which is that I rated the third book 2 stars. It was a mix between an extremely young-leaning young adult fantasy that made no sense and a fever dream. Like, it was just so convoluted, not in like a Sarah J. Maas, there's gonna be a reason it's convoluted and you'll find out 3 books later and it'll all make sense and be amazing. No, it was just convoluted because it didn't make any sense. Like the plot, I wasn't following what was going on, okay? And it's not because I can't follow plot, it's because it wasn't very well written, in my opinion. I'm really sorry. I promise this whole video will not be negative reviews, but this first one unfortunately was a 2-star read for me, and I do not give a lot of books 2-star reviews. I thought it was incredibly young adult leaning, so much of the romance. My least favorite thing to read, especially in a romance fantasy, is when there's huge sweeping world-ending stakes and the main character and their love interest cannot look past just saying what's on their brain to resolve their very easily resolvable conflict. And that's what I felt like this entire romance between Jax and Evangeline was. Like, if you guys would stop and have a 5-minute conversation where you tell each other the truth, you would not have relationship issues. Like if you both are on the same page, you both feel the same things, just freaking talk to each other about it, and then there's literally no issue. So to read 200 pages of the hemming and hawing, and this is how I feel, but I'm never going to say it, and he can't possibly feel the same way about me, or listening to like outside influences that obviously don't have your best interest at heart and letting that sway your feelings about a person just makes no sense to me. Like, I'm a cut to the chase person. Like, I hate reading that crap. I hate slogging through someone just like hemming and hawing over their feelings and the choice they need to make. No, I like a character that knows what they want, that puts themselves, that's like sure enough about themselves to, regardless of how the other person responds, put themselves out there, be truthful, be true to who they are, and be brave enough to just be like, yo, here are all my cards on the table. What do you think? Like, that's the kind of character I like reading about. I like the kind of character who isn't easily swayed by other people's opinions and thoughts. And I like a character who's bold. And Evangeline just isn't that for me. Like, she's just, I don't like her very much. The other thing I really didn't like about this book was that she was like force feeding us every thought and feeling, like 12 times over. It felt like a scene would happen, we would understand from just the context of the scene how Evangeline must be feeling. But then after that scene, we'd have to read 5 freaking pages of inner monologue of Evangeline hitting over and over and over and over again feelings we already knew she was having by the context of the scene. We just didn't need all that extra explanation. It felt like weak writing. It felt like she didn't trust us as an audience to be able to interpret her character. Like, it just felt very, very juvenile to read. Ugh, wasn't it for me. And then the ending was so ridiculous. That's the part I thought was just like a fever dream. Could hardly follow what was going on because it made no damn sense. I will say the ending with Apollo and the tree, without spoiling it, I did really like that part. So that was very satisfying. And I do really love Jax as a character, and I like Evangeline as a character. It's just a shame to me that they were so tropey. It's okay for that trope to be the main thing about the character in the first book of a series, but once you're to the 3rd book of the series, you want a character to be so much more layered. You want to move past the trope and realize that they're much more complex than what we initially thought about them based on the trope they were written in. And that just wasn't the case for these two. I felt like they could never escape from their trope, and I just, I didn't like it. I'm sorry, you guys. I just didn't like it. If you've read this series, let me know down below what you thought. Okay, the next book I'm going to talk about is Britney Spears' memoir. Oh, oh my gosh, you guys. Whoa. This was a freaking journey, okay? It was a journey. I read this in one sitting. I think I stayed up till 3:30 in the morning reading it the day it came out because I simply could not put it down. And here's the thing. I've loved Britney Spears my whole life. When I was 6 years old, I was just singing Hit Me Baby One More Time in my bedroom. I made my mom take me to McDonald's to get the NSYNC and Britney Spears double-sided CD. Like, it was a whole thing, okay? I loved Britney Spears. This book was clearly written by Britney. She didn't have a ghostwriter or anything like that, and I don't even know if that's true. I would hope that she didn't have a ghostwriter because the writing was, in my brain, clearly written by someone who's not a writer. And that's not to say it was badly written. It was just written from Britney's very, very clear, distinct voice. And it felt oddly juvenile in like a stunted way, like almost like she's frozen in time at 20 years old. And I don't know, it was like the eeriest thing to read. I wouldn't say it seemed crazy. I would say it seemed very unhinged, especially toward the end. The beginning, when she talks about her very early years, going through the Mickey Mouse Club, getting her first hit, going on tour as a kid when her life was really successful, up through pretty much like her relationship with Justin, and that's kind of where things started to turn. All that was pretty well-rounded, pretty grounded. She's clearly had time to reconcile that part of her life and deal with her feelings and her emotions, so it was much more even-keeled. And she was able to talk about it with kind of a healed outlook, I felt. But then once you hit the end and she started talking about the conservatorship period of her life and how horrible her team was to her and how betrayed she felt by her family and how clearly still very, very angry she is with them, as she should be because they sound like very horrible people, it just became more and more unhinged and it's kind of sad to read. Not because I thought like, oh, Britney's still crazy or anything like that. I really truly saw like the humanity in her book and her stories, and my gosh, what the media has put that woman through is just absolutely horrific. But I think I expected it to be more like Paris Hilton's book, which was probably the best memoir I've read all year, and I read a lot of memoirs. Clearly, Paris had taken the time to go through years of therapy, really confront her past, understand her ADHD diagnosis, and use that to basically set boundaries for her life and become a much healthier person and a much more healed and able to see things from a faraway lens, able to talk about her life in a very productive and let's move forward better kind of way. And it was just so smartly written. She seemed like just so with it. I was so impressed by how intelligent she came across in her memoir and how clearly she's trying to better her life and really trying to understand the root of her issues, and just like had an extremely really good, wise outlook. I expected Britney's book to feel like that, and it certainly was not. It felt much more like a woman who is in the midst of still figuring out her very messy, very abuse-heavy background and not really coming out the other side yet. My sad feelings mostly came from feeling like, is she being taken advantage of still by this publisher? Like, let's get out a Britney book right away to make as much money as possible. It doesn't matter what kind of headspace she's in writing it. The end just felt very rushed, very unprocessed, very angry and extreme, unhinged. I just kept thinking, this is so unhinged. So it made me feel bad for her. It was certainly extremely entertaining and enlightening to read. There's many stories within it that have never been shared publicly that are very shocking, and I don't know, it was just unlike anything I've ever read. I'll say that. I think I gave it 3 stars. It was I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Obviously, I could not put it down, but it left me with complicated feelings at the end, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, I just hope she's okay. I hope that she's in lots of therapy and finding her way out of things and moving on to a better, healthier life. I just hope she has people around her that have her best interest at heart, and her book kind of made me question and hope that that's the case. So that was a journey and a half. Okay, so then next, let's talk about, I actually have these physical books, Iron Flame, the sequel to Fourth Wing. Okay, oh my gosh. I have so much to say about this book. I think Fourth Wing may have been the most like trendy book of this year. I actually talked about me reading Fourth Wing in a video I'll link up here. So I'm not going to talk too deeply about the first book, although I will say I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved it, fell in love with the characters, the world building. It was a total page turner, couldn't put it down, loved absolutely everything about it, was so stoked for the sequel. Like, I think everyone who read Fourth Wing was the most anticipated book of the year for sure, this sequel. And it's crazy that Fourth Wing just came out in June. I think June, maybe earlier than that, I'm not sure. I read it in June and it had just recently come out, and that already the sequel is out. That's so crazy. I think we're gonna have to wait a lot longer for the 3rd book, but I think it was a very different vibe than Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing felt like an easy read, like a page turner, like I said. It didn't feel simple, but it certainly didn't feel convoluted and super detailed and in the weeds in terms of the world building. It just felt very easy, very understandable, without feeling young adult, which I really appreciated. This book was not the case. I felt like it was almost like, okay, we gave you Fourth Wing, now we've got to step it up a notch. It's Kindle, it was like almost 900 pages. How long is the actual physical book? I read it on Kindle, and once Barnes & Noble freaking shipped me my copy finally, I read the actual physical book as well. It's 623 pages. On Kindle, it's almost 900. So it's meatier for sure, and so many things happened, but it wasn't as big of a page turner. I thought it was a little choppy in the way it was written, and at times I felt like, is something gonna happen here? Like, I get this is going on and then this is going on, but like, is something bigger coming? Here's what I really didn't like about it, and this is kind of a spoiler, so if you don't want spoilers, just skip a couple seconds ahead. I didn't like how the first book ended, totally separate location, the reveal of the revolution, and it abruptly ends there, and you're like, you can't wait for the second book to pick up there and figure out what's going on. So the second book does pick up there, but they basically ship her back to Basgiath like right away. It just felt very anticlimactic and too secretive, I guess. I wanted more at the beginning in the revolution, and in that world I wanted to figure out a new setting, and I just felt like we were catapulted back, and it was almost like the only reason we had that location change in the first place was so the first book could end on a cliffhanger. It felt like that wasn't explored the way I wanted it to be explored. It was like taking a step back. And another thing I didn't like was, in that same vein, I feel like Xaden and Violet's relationship also took a step back. I hate it when that happens. I get the reason, sort of, that it happened that way. She felt very betrayed by his lack of seemingly trust in her, by withholding lots of information, but at the same time, like, girl, the information he was withholding was kind of like life and death. he had to be real certain about sharing it before he did. Like, you can understand that. So it felt like we took a step back in their relationship, and I was excited to move forward with their relationship and explore what that looked like as a more like committed and reliable partnership, instead of like this wishy-washy will they won't they still coming up with conflict that seems pretty convoluted. The number one thing I hated about it was Xaden's stupid ask me the question. You want information? Ask me the questions. Like, it's like, bro, this cannot be a one-sided relationship. You gotta share information, so she'll share information. Like, just have a friggin' conversation and talk about your crap, and then it'll be solved. It's another issue I had with it. But for the most part, I really did enjoy it very much, especially toward the end. I feel like it had a slump in the middle, but the end was super solid, and I really, man, that ending, whoa. Yeah, that sucks. That ending freaking sucks. I don't know what she's gonna do about that, but we'll figure it out sooner or later. Some of the things I really, really loved were all the Andarna stuff. I loved that. I was so glad that we didn't spend the whole book withholding information from her friends. I liked seeing the war that she kind of had and the distance she had to take from her friends to keep them safe. I liked that character conflict within her. That didn't bother me at all. And I really enjoyed how it didn't last the whole book. She finally lets them in, and they immediately prove that they're her true friends. They can be trusted. They work together. I love seeing their unit come super close. I loved the introduction of the Griffin Riders and Kat specifically. I loved that whole dynamic between her and Violet. And there was just a lot of really great character in this book, which I liked. You know, it doesn't have to be this huge, sweeping, life or death, action-packed book from start to finish. I liked the character exploration and some of the slower moments that were taken. I just wish it was threaded a little more smoothly. Like I said, it felt pretty choppy. Overall, I did really enjoy it. It was slower than I anticipated it being, and there were some parts that frustrated me, but for the most part, like, I'm so excited to read the third one whenever it comes out. I gave it 3 stars, not because I didn't enjoy it. Like I said, I very thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great book, but it was almost a 4-star. If Goodreads had halves, I would give it like 3.75. Like, it was really, really good. I enjoyed it. It just disappointed me a little bit, especially compared to Fourth Wing, which kind of just blew my mind. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is like the next greatest thing to ACOTAR or Throne of Glass. Like, I found my next series I'm obsessed with. It missed the mark for me in that way, but for the most part, thoroughly enjoyed it. Would definitely recommend this entire series, and can't wait for the third one. Okay, and then our final book, ending on a banger, Check&Mate by Ali Hazelwood. You guys, if you've never watched any of my book videos before, then I have to explain that Ali Hazelwood is my favorite romance writer. I'm basically over the romance genre. That's not true. There are a couple of romance authors I really enjoy, but the only romance author that I'm like live and die for, will read all of her books the second they come out, love her writing so incredibly much, love her characters, love her stories, Ali Hazelwood. I love this girl. Now, here's the caveat to this. I hate YA. I just hate young adult books. I've talked about this many times on my book videos, so I don't feel like I need to go into it, but it just is not my favorite thing to read. There's absolutely an audience for it. Back in my young adult days, I loved reading YA, especially in like middle school. I was really into YA books, but I just grew out of them super quick. I like a more complex story and more mature characters. And so I thought, oh no, when I heard that Ali Hazelwood was releasing her first young adult romance book, I was like, crap, this is it. This is where I fall out of love with Ali Hazelwood, and I just don't want to read this book because it's YA. I went ahead and ordered it because I've literally given every single one of her books 5 stars. I love her so much. And so I thought, if there's anyone that can write a young adult book that I like, it's Ali Hazelwood. And I am so happy to report that this book was a 17-star review. Like, it, dare I say, it's my favorite Ali Hazelwood book. I know, that's freaking crazy. It sucked me in from the very beginning, warmed my heart. It was the most like heartfelt of her books ever. And in fact, it reminded me more of just like literary fiction than it did romance. The romance is certainly a big plot line within the book, but I would say it's secondary to the character's journey. It follows Mallory, who is a superstar chess prodigy when she's young, quits for mysterious reasons, meets the top chess player who's also her age and a child prodigy. He's like 20, she's 18, I think, and it's all about the world of chess, how she rises in the ranks and starts competing professionally and earning money for her family. The thing I loved the most about this book was her relationship with her family. Her dad died, we don't know why. Her mother has MS, I think. Oh gosh, I'm not gonna remember. Some sort of like autoimmune disease. She has 2 younger sisters. And so ever since her father died, she's felt like this extreme responsibility for her family to get the bills paid, to work and provide for her family, to the point that she ended up not going to college when she graduated high school because she had to stay home and take care of her family. And the complexity of their relationship, the sweetness of her sisters' characters and the sassiness of her sisters, like, it was the most realistic family dynamic. I loved reading it. Just what it's like to be the oldest sibling and to feel a certain responsibility over your family, and oh my gosh, how she just like warred with herself to pursue her own love and career and life outside of the responsibility of her family. Like, it was just so touching. Like, this book made me cry. One particular scene where she and her mom and her sisters have a giant heart-to-heart that needed to be had. It was just the sweetest, most relatable, just heartfelt relationship, heartfelt family. I just absolutely adored every second of reading this book. And that's not even the romance. The romance was great. I love Nolan, the main love interest in this book. He is just he reminded me of Eric in a lot of ways. I just love him. I love Mallory. I love how complex and how relatable and how quirky Ali Hazelwood makes her characters. I have never read a book about chess before, or isn't there a Netflix show, Queen's Gambit? I think I never got into that when it was super trendy, so I've never the only thing I know about chess is Chess the Musical, and that doesn't really count, okay? The chess world is crazy. I thought it was the most fascinating thing in the entire world to read about. I want to know how close this is to the reality of the chess world, and honestly, if there's books about the chess world, I want to read them. I loved every freaking single page of this book, every single freaking word. I'm obsessed with it. I loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. Definitely in my top 5 best reads of the year so far. I was so pleasantly surprised that somebody wrote a YA book that I liked, but certainly not surprised at all that it was Ali Hazelwood, because I love that girl so much. And apparently her next book is some werewolf or vampire crazy thing. You know I'm gonna read it because it sounds crazy to me, but so did this, and it was the best book she's written, so wow, so many good releases. Let me know down below, did I miss anything? Are there any super trendy books, super anticipated releases that I know nothing about? Comment them down below, because I will obviously read a trendy book. And what did you think of these books if you read any of them? Let me know your ratings down below in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!